Hey guys, tonight we will slip into a small pocket of moon-pale mist and wander a very old hillside where fig leaves bead with dawn and sheep bells speak in silver syllables. We stay soft, we stay slow, and we let the past lean close like a friend sharing warm bread. You probably won't survive this, by which I mean the urge to fall asleep will ambush you halfway through a sentence, so consider that your only real danger. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing the map of sleepy lights we make together. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drift down through a gauze of cloud until your feet find a ridgeline brushed in grass the color of olive smoke. Alba Longa lifts around you in gentle ribs of hill, and the lake below holds the sky like a polished mirror. You stand quiet, toes in the dew, as the air carries damp stone, crushed thyme, and the green, milky breath of figs waking on their terraces. A thin path curls along the slope, and there, see them, two shepherds in cloaks the shade of late straw, waving as if you were expected all along. They raise crooks in greeting, the wood worn smooth by seasons, and their smiles are as unhurried as the morning. You step forward, and the ground answers with soft crunches, the gravel polite under your sandals. One shepherd, hair silvered like dawn on water, touches his chest, then touches yours, a simple welcome. The other offers a fig still warm from the leaf that covered it. It breaks in your hands with a sound like a breath, and the seeds crackle softly as you taste sun, even though the sun has barely opened its eye. You chew slowly as bells drowse below, where the flock moves like a spilled cloud along the terraces. They guide you to the edge of the ridge to look down. The hillside is a long, sloping quilt, terraces sown with low stone walls, fig trees keeping each other company, their branches shaped by careful hands. Between them run narrow lanes of earth, damp and dark, stitched with the faint prints of hooves in sandals. The shepherds point, not with urgency but with that patient pride country folk keep for the ordinary miracles they curate each day. There is the spring, they seem to say, hidden in laurel shade. There, a clay cistern, the color of baked wind. There, the shallow channels, tufa-cut and moss-soft, that will matter to you later, though you don't know it yet. Your breath falls into the rhythm of the sheep bells. A clink, a hush, a clink, a hush. You follow the shepherds along the path, and the mist slides aside like a curtain drawn by a thoughtful stagehand. The world reveals itself in layers, a child's laugh from a lower terrace, the thock of a wooden pestle in a mortar, the green hush under a fig canopy where dew drips in a small applause. The shepherd with the silver hair shows you a gesture, palm down, slow circle, meaning easy, all is well, no hurry. You answer with the same circle, and your shoulders remember how to be light. A ewe trots past with a look of businesslike serenity. A lamb pauses to study your laces, then decides you are not edible and continues, tiny knees high-stepping like it wears invisible boots. You pass a low altar of smoothed stone, garlanded with fig leaves and little clumps of wildflowers. Someone has left a pinch of grain, a suggestion of milk, a bead of oil shining like a small captured sunrise. One of the shepherds taps the altar gently with his knuckles, a quiet conversation with what cannot be seen but is everywhere, like the damp in the air and the sky in the water. You learn the simplest words without trying. A pointing finger means that terrace. A wave down means quiet, sheep sleeping. A hand cupped to ear means listen. You listen. The ridgeline holds a soft choir, water ticking in stone channels, reeds combing the light breeze at the lake's lip, bees negotiating in violets. Farther along, a woman in a russet mantle stoops to tie a bundle of pruned switches, and she nods as you pass, the exact nod one gives to a good day that is unfolding exactly as it should. When the path dips under a canopy of leaf, the light goes green and tender. The shepherds stop and let you press your palm to the fig bark, cool, faintly damp, with little highways of sap beneath. You feel the tree thinking slow thoughts about sweetness and shade, about the patience of stone, about the way a hillside can remember water. The silver-haired shepherd picks a leaf, folds it, and uses it as a ladle to lift dew from a jar nested in the earth. You drink dew from a leaf and think, this is what mornings taste like when they are not in a hurry. They lead you along a curve of wall where the stones are stacked without mortar, so well balanced that even the sheep hesitate to disturb their agreement. Down the slope, a smoke ribbon rises from a farmhouse chimney, the smell round and friendly, barley, honey, something tangy and soft like fresh cheese. Your stomach answers with the smallest sound, and the shepherds laugh, that gentle, shoulder-shaking laugh of people who know all appetites are honest. A palm turns, come, so you go. The terrace you enter is edged with thyme and pennyroyal, the herbs launching tiny boats of scent that float at ankle height. The figs overhead hold droplets like stars that forgot to leave at dawn. Someone has laid a linen cloth on a low wall, 2 cups of clay, a wedge of cheese stamped with a braid pattern, a little pot of honey, and round loaves whose crusts crackle quietly, cooling. The shepherds break a loaf and pass it, no words needed. The crust sings in your fingers, and when you taste, the crumb is warm and slightly sour, the honey green gold and floral, the cheese as soft as a promise. The hillside seems to approve, all those leaves applauding again. You settle on the wall, legs dangling, while the sheep murmur across the slope. A piper somewhere below sends up a thread of tune that the breeze stitches to your thoughts. The shepherds speak in their slow hand language, telling you without fuss that today is yours to learn, to stroll, to borrow the pace of sheep and figs. They promise an unhurried day, and you believe them because the hillside has already taught you its greatest trick. The clock here is just the sun moving across the leaves, and the leaves are unbothered by numbers. A bell clinks, a bee coins the air with gold, and a crumb sits bright on your thumb. You lick the sweetness and close your eyes, and the hillside hums its welcome into your bones. The shepherds rise, crooks in hand, and tilt their heads toward a path that falls away in green shade, toward hearth warmth and a table you will soon learn by heart. You stand, brushing crumbs from your palms, and follow, already lighter, already home. You follow the shepherds into the green hush, where fig leaves overlap like small hands agreeing to keep a secret. The path narrows and softens. Your steps turn careful, courteous to the earth. The silver-haired shepherd lifts 2 fingers, then traces a slow curve in the air. You recognize the circle from earlier. Easy. But now he adds a quiet tap to his wrist, a sign that means slow as water in shade. You mirror it, and he grins, the quick, boyish grin that survives every winter. The younger shepherd, sun-browned and quick-eyed, teaches you a greeting used when you meet a flock. Palm open, waist height, a gentle sway, as if you were a meadow in a small breeze. You try it, wobbling once. The ewe across the lane blinks, mildly entertained. Another sign involves the crook, held across the body, head down. It says, "We wait." Lifted sideways, it invites, "We flow." They show you a whistle that calls the dog, 2 soft notes that the air tucks under its arm and carries along the terraces. A wiry dog appears from a bush of thyme, ears like folded fig leaves, tail sketching punctuation in the dust. The dog's bell gives 1 polite chime introducing itself, then it tads ahead with a professionalism that would put any office to shame. Under the leaves, light becomes a tender, dappled soup. You brush a fig, and it answers with that faint green scent that lives halfway between milk and rain. The silver-haired shepherd plucks one, not ripe, he explains, with a stone-skipping twitch of his wrist. Let it fatten, let the stem bend like a bow. Another tree offers a fruit with its neck slightly wilted, a quiet nod that it is ready. He shows you how to turn it gently, a quarter twist and a patient breath, so the fruit agrees to leave without complaint. A white tear of sap beads at the stem. He points, that milk will try to make your fingers a couple forever. You laugh and he grins again, then wipes the bead on the underside of a leaf where the sun won't scald it. They speak fig lore the way people tell old jokes. Familiar beats, a practiced pause. There's the story of the wind that thinks it is a bee, rattling the leaves and convincing the fruit to sweeten. There is the rule of the moon, not a superstition, the younger shepherd insists with a lopsided smile, but a rhythm, like the flock's afternoon drift toward water. He scratches a small crescent in the dust, prune when the moon is shy, water when it fattens. The silver-haired one adds a knuckle tip to mark the good days for grafting, cool mornings when birds rehearse but do not yet perform. They walk you along a low wall patched with moss where tiny ferns drink the light. Here, he says with a tilt of fingers, is where a previous hand grafted a sweet branch to a sturdy trunk. You can see the seam, a pale wrist where 2 lives shook hands and decided to share the work. The younger shepherd mimes the timing. Wait for the sap to whisper, not sing. Make the cut clean, patient as a nap. Bind it with a strip of bark and a promise. You bow, a little ceremonious because the hill seems to prefer that. The flock moves in slow punctuation marks, nibbling, considering, moving again. The shepherds show you how they read the hill instead of the clock. When shadow pools on the eastern wall, the flock turns west, following warmth the way sunflowers would if they wore wool. When the lake's face ripples with a southern breeze, the lake breath, the dog's bell murmurs, and the animals drift toward reed shade without anyone needing to tell them a story. Your guides call this moving with the hill, and they demonstrate with their bodies. A step, a pause, a glance, a shift of weight, as if dancing with a partner who does not like surprises. You learn the flock rhythm. Bells make a map of sound, and where the music thins, you find strays. A lamb experiments with your hem, tasting it with philosophical seriousness. The dog administers a gentle nudge, and the lamb decides grass is both more traditional and less chewy. A ram named, judging by the shepherd's gesture, something like Big Moon, turns his head to present you his best profile. You compliment him in the universal language of admiration, an appreciative ah and a respectful nod. He accepts, then returns to the eternal business of lunch. The path kinks around a fig heavy with fruit, and you duck, brushing a leaf that has hidden a cache of cool air. The silver-haired shepherd taps your shoulder and points to the ground where the soil darkens a shade. There, a narrow vein of dampness snakes between stones. He lays his palm on it as if greeting an old friend. This is how they know where to sit in high noon, how they guess where roots will be happiest, how a dry week will be endured without complaint. He signs patience, then the moon arc again, then a little cradle, patience like a moon rocking water to sleep. They show you how to carry yourself so heat thinks you are not worth chasing. Keep your steps small and steady, keep your breath low, keep your thoughts like sheep, never sprint unless a cliff appears. You try it and feel your marching habit melt into a stroll that might, if unobserved, become a saunter. Somewhere, a piper catches a note and holds it, and the hill seems to inhale with you. The younger shepherd snorts at your first attempt to vault a shallow rut. No, no, he signs, we go around. The hill is old, and old things prefer courtesy to acrobatics. A fig splits in the tree with a sugar-soft sigh, and a bee arrives like a letter delivered to the right address. The shepherd flicks 2 fingers. That one belongs to the sky now. He gives you another smaller fruit and you taste it, green, sweet, shy, a promise written in lowercase. You tuck the stem into your belt, a token your fingers find and turn whenever your attention tries to run ahead. You practice the greeting again, palm open, sway gentle. The dog yawns approval. The flock shifts and drowses. You realize with a quiet smile that your body has adopted new time, fig time, sheep time, the kind that does not object to pauses. The silver-haired shepherd rests the crook in the crook of his elbow and shows you the hand for enough learning for now, which turns out to be the same as a good tide. You make it back to him, imperfect but enthusiastic. He approves with the tap-tier knuckles, then points along the lane where leaves lacquer the air, inviting you deeper into the orchard's soft grammar. The lane releases you into a courtyard, whose corners remember round years of sun. A clay hearth sits like a friendly moon against the wall, its mouth wide, its breath warm. Banked embers glowing fox red. A woman in a plum-dyed shawl lifts her hand in that slow, welcoming circle you already know, easy, and you return it, slightly over-enthusiastic, almost saluting the bread. She lacks in a way that cools the air and waves you nearer. Bread happens here the way mornings happen, quietly, without permission, and always at the right time. A low table waits beneath fig leaves, trained along a wooden trellis, the shade deep and dappled, the kind of green that invites whispers. On the board, a round of fresh cheese with the braided stamp pressed into its skin. A clay pot of honey the color of late afternoon, a dish of olives glistening as if they grew up wanting to be stars. The shepherds set down baskets, their croups lean together like gossiping cranes, and a child appears, solemn as a priest, carrying a folded cloth. You're shown where to sit, and your only job, frankly, is not to inhale the loaf whole. The hearth-keeper, gray hair bound in a twist, forearms dusted with flour as if winter had been practicing, lifts a peel and slides a small round to the lip of the heat. The crust sings its tiny crick-crack music. She points, draws a crescent in the soot-dark air. Like the moon, the loaf should open, not explode. You nod, pretending you always knew bread was a lunar subject. A second round waits on the table, and she places your hands over it. Palms open, press with the heel, fold, turn. The motion a tidy dance that convinces dough to become itself. You follow. The dough resists, then relents, then sighs, and yes, you are absurdly proud of a ball of future toast. The child grins and shows you a secret, a fig leaf dunked in a bowl, shaken once, then draped over the cheese to keep the morning bees politely curious rather than deeply involved. He taps the leaf's central vein. Do you hear the slow water there? You do not, but you agree that you might. He sets out small cups while the plum-dyed shawl woman pours something gentle and warm that tastes faintly of toasted grain and the idea of apples. The shepherd with silver hair nods to the cups and then to your eyes. Drink with your eyes first, always, so you remember there is a world before there is a mouth. They fold you into their routine as if you were a shawl they'd been mending. The younger shepherd ties your sleeves with a strip of soft cloth so flour doesn't turn you into a snowdrift. The dog stations itself under the trellis, a watchman pretending to nap. A ewe leans into the doorway, considers the scene, and leaves with the scandalized look of someone who has caught bread fraternizing with outsiders. At the hearth, the keeper slides the loaf free. She taps its bottom, listening for the small drum of doneness. She holds your knuckles to the crust. You feel that hollow music vibrate up your arm like approval. They show you how to crack the crust without wounding the steam. Thumbs together, a patient pull, a quiet exhale as the interior parts like early fog. You pass pieces, and the rhythm establishes itself. Tear, set, drizzle. The honey makes a thin amber ribbon that winks in the light, and when it lands, it changes the bread's smell from warm to warm and story, linden and violet, and something sunny that makes you close your eyes. The cheese meets it halfway with a young lactic brightness. You have never been less interested in clocks. The plum-shawled woman touches your shoulder and performs a quick sequence with her fingers. Bread for strength, honey for joy, cheese for patience. Bread goes to the shepherds first because they give the day a spine. Honey moves to the child next because sweetness is a promise. Cheese travels in a circle counter to the sun because patience often arrives from the quiet side. It is not doctrine, just choreography, but your chest loosens the way hills loosen when the lake wind begins. Between mouthfuls, you learn the house's hour markers. Bird song changes at the third crust crackle. The shadows from the trellis cross the threshold's notch before they water the goats. When the gourd cup shrugs in your hand, it is time to turn the cheese in its way. You help. Hands washed in a bowl the child holds like a moon. Lifting the round with 2 fingers slipped under the edge, rotating it gently as if it were a sleepy planet. A few drops purl down your wrists. You remember the shepherd's warning about fig milk making fingers a couple forever, and laugh, wiping your hands on a reed mat with the solemn care of someone avoiding eternal attachment to dairy. Stories collect like crumbs on the cloth. The hearth-keeper speaks of a year when bees adored the rosemary so much that the honey tasted like green thunder. The silver-haired shepherd counters with the seasoned sheep decided the wind was a shepherd and followed it sideways for an afternoon. You offer your newest trick, the palm-down slow circle, and say, "Easy," and the room nods as one. The child copies your hand. His version looks like a small fish wagging its tail. He is unreasonably proud, and rightly so. A clay juror in the corner hums with cool, a spring's breath tamed and stored. The shepherd tips it over the jug's lip and waters the clay threshold. Steam rises in a ghost of noon. No one says anything about need or fear. They simply water the doorway as if feeding a quiet animal that lives in the house and likes its whiskers damp. You file that away next to the fig-leaf dew ladle, a list of small kindnesses toward thirst. The meal slows into that particular post-bread silence where even birds lower their voices. You help gather crumbs for the hens, who attend to them with professional gravity. The dog sighs, the hearth clicks, the fig leaves trade shade in tiny coins of light. You are shown a sleeping corner under the trellis and coaxed to stretch your spine. You do, and the world softens at the edges like a loaf's shoulder. Someone hums a tune you heard as a thread on the ridge, and the courtyard inhales and exhales with you, the past and present settling in your chest like two cats who have decided to share a lap. Before you drift, the hearth-keeper presses a small braid of straw into your palm. "For luck," says her smile, and then, with a tap against your knuckles, "For practice." You tuck it into your belt beside the fig stem. You think of the shepherd's moon, of patience in the sap, and bread listening to its own drum, and as your lashes rest on your cheeks, the house adopts you for an hour the way hills adopt dew, without ceremony, entirely, tenderly. When you wake from that trellis nap, the courtyard is the same, and also kinder, as if the hearth spent your sleep polishing the air. The plum-shawled woman lifts your braid of straw, still tucked at your belt, gives it a playful tug, then points toward the lake with 2 fingers walking. The shepherds echo the gesture with their crooks, head tilt, small grin, and the dog contributes a stretch so luxurious it counts as a vote. You answer with the palm-down slow circle, easy, and your feet remember the lane. The path unwinds in green and dust, switching back through terraces until the world opens like a hand cupping bright water. There the lake spreads a page of blue-gray silk, and along its reed-framed edge a little market gathers itself without hurry. Cloths on low walls, baskets nested like sleeping birds, pots in various moods of earth, and a ribbon of smoke ribboning yet again from a brazier that smells of thyme, olives, and the patient gossip of onions. Your stomach, flattered by attention earlier, volunteers to be curious again. The first stall is hardly a stall, just a woman in a saffron kerchief, knees braced, weaving a basket that already looks as if it knows what it will carry. Her fingers move like small, sensible fish. She pats the space beside her, and the shepherds nod, "Sit." The dog parks under her knee and adopts a professional interest in reeds. She presses a coil into your hands. Flex, listen, and teaches you the rhythm. Over, under, tighten, like a lullaby, not a warning. You try. Your basket in progress is a charming disaster with confidence issues, but the woman's laughter is a warm blanket. She adjusts your weave with 2 quick tucks, and somehow your mistakes become a pattern the basket can live with. For eggs, she signs, shaping a rounded bottom. You imagine fragile shells resting in your crooked handiwork and decide the hens are braver than you. Next, a potter sits at a low wheel turned with a heel as patient as a moonless night. Clay rises under his hands like a hill, remembering its job. You crouch opposite. He wets his palms, draws them up the spinning cylinder, and a jar appears so quietly it feels like a secret he lets you overhear. He slides it off, sets it with the others, shouldered jugs, shallow dishes, cups with lips like gentle promises. He invites your fingers to the slip bowl, and with a twig you draw a thin fig leaf along one cup, the vein line a tribute to the dew ladle you drank from. He marks it with a dot so he can find it later, your small leaf taking a nap in the future kiln. A piper leans against a pole of shade and braids 2 tunes together, one for the water, one for the soles of your feet. Children chase the braided melody, each trying to catch the part that fits their stride. A boy in a too serious belt offers you a clay whistle shaped like a bird. You blow. The sound is a tiny reed with opinions. The boy nods gravely as if to say, "Yes, acceptable," then runs off to critique a goose. Along the low wall, a man has spread lengths of undyed cloth woven with a faint herringbone. He lifts one and shakes it. It snaps like a quiet flag, smelling of river stones and sun. He folds it around your shoulders and tucks the corner as if you were a jug he intends to carry safely. You murmur a thank you and do the slow circle with your hand. He mirrors you, then points to the lake where 2 small boats nose the reeds like curious sheep. Fisher folk mend nets there, pulling the cords through brown fingers, humming the kind of hum that will carry a person across an afternoon without complaint. Somewhere behind you, a tiny crisis unfolds. A goat, no doubt a philosopher, has decided that a stack of shallow bowls is a mountain that should not exist. The first bowl wobbles. The second begins to consider alternative careers. You and the dog arrive at the same moment. You steady the stack. The dog steers the goat with a look that communicates both respect and inevitability. The potter claps once, not alarm, but a punctuation mark ending the sentence, "We have spared ourselves more sweeping." The goat takes its dignity elsewhere, nibbling the hem of the air. Your heart, which rarely volunteers for athletics, resumes sheep time. The shepherds guide you to a brazier where a man in a lake-colored tunic offers slices of flatbread, blistered and freckled, slicked with olive oil bright enough to count as weather. He sprinkles crushed thyme and a crumble of cheese. You balance the warm triangle on your palm and devour it like a respectful pilgrim. Around you, bargaining sounds like banter rather than war. A laugh, a tilt of the head, a counteroffer measured in smiles. The basket weaver trades a small egg cradle for a jar stamped with a thumbprint. The potter accepts a string of dried figs as if receiving telegrams from last summer. You find a stall with wooden spoons and shallow ladles carved from olive wood, each one carrying the ghost of a tree ring. The vendor taps one against your knuckles. Listen, and the tone is mellow, like a friendly admonition to not rush soup. You take a spoon that fits your hand as if it trained for you. You add a small fig leaf charm plated from reed in case your pockets forget the smell of green milk on warm mornings. Lake light turns everyone into a gentle painting. Saffron kerchiefs halo, lambs acquire polite glows, even your small basket looks more confident. The piper shifts to a sleepier tune, and two elders, their backs the shape of parentheses, sway in a way that admits they have been swaying since before the heel remembers turning the wheel. The silver-haired shepherd buys a twist of dried herbs and tucks it into your belt. "For the doorway spirit," says the tap on your wrist. You picture the clay threshold drinking steam, whiskers damp, satisfied. A tiny curiosity swirls around your feet. A baby goat, chewing on your braiding handle's straw. You bend down, your face nearly flush with the bird's nobbling. You offer straight shoulders for play with small horns. The little branch paws at your knee, then manages to stand on its fingertips and bellow a tiny mountain. Holding the little piece of the landscape in your hand, falls into the braid of your basket. By the time the shadows grow longer and the piper's tune folds into the reeds, your palms remember reeds and clay. Your belt is a museum of small kindnesses, straw braid, herb twist, fig charm, and your ears carry a comfortable clutter of market voices. The shepherds make the sign for flowing, crooks angled sideways. The dog, done with his goat diplomacy, performs a victory sneeze. You turn away from the lake, not away from the day, and the market waves you uphill with the kind of farewell that isn't a goodbye so much as a promise to resume the sentence later. You climb in company of baskets, pots, and music that lingers on your shoulder like a friendly hand. You climb into quieter terraces where the air feels newly ironed, and the shadows lie neatly at the feet of trees. An elder waits there, wrapped in a cloak the color of the inside of a walnut, face folded like patient paper. He has the kind of hands that look like they were taught by bark. He greets you with the palm-down circle, easy, and adds the moon arc with 2 fingers, a reminder of timing you have begun to trust. The shepherds settle nearby, dog composing himself into a professional comma, and the elder lays out his small, solemn tools. A knife thin as a crescent, strips of willow bark, a thumb of beeswax the color of afternoon, and a little pot where resin sits like a dark thought learning to be kind. He invites you to smell the knife's edge, not with your nose all the way in there, but close enough to catch the ghost of oil and clean metal. "Sharp loves 3s, he signs, a little wink. Dull bruises. You remember the potter's wheel, the basket weaver's rhythm, the piper's twin tunes. Here, too, everything depends on the gentleness of what touches what. He chooses a sturdy fig with a trunk like a storyteller's throat and shows you the union you admired earlier, the pale wrist where 2 lives shook hands. Today, another handshake. He feels for sap with the back of his knuckle, the way a baker feels dough's mood. Then he glances at the sky, as if reading a friend's eyebrow. The moon is hiding somewhere behind the day, shy but present. Good. He shows you the cut on the host, a steady, slanting slice that opens a mouth just wide enough to speak, but not to argue. Your first attempt is too jagged, more enthusiastic than precise. He steadies your wrist, whispers, "Breathe," not with a word, but with the lift of his chest, and the next cut is a single idea instead of 3 half ideas. From a basket, more confident than yours, but family to it, he brings a young scion, slender, leaf-budding, hopeful in the discreet way of twigs. He trims it to a neat wedge. "Teach them to agree," he signs, setting the wedge into the opening, lining the green edges like palms finding the right clasp. The fit is surprisingly intimate. He wraps the join with willow strips, their fibers holding as politely as a promise. You lean close. The cut edges breathe a faint milk scent, that fig truth that once tried to marry your fingers forever. Beeswax softens against his thumb. He mixes it with a pinch of warm resin until it yields like late butter. With 2 careful dabs, he seals the seam, not smothering, just enough to keep weather from meddling. He places your hand over the bandaged spot. "Now you wait," says the tap. "You feed. You shade." It is the same recipe as bread, you think. Strength, patience, joy, only translated into leaf. Together, you kneel at the base of a younger tree, where soil wears the fragrance of last season's leaves and a rumor of ash. He lifts a handful and asks your nose a question. Does it smell awake? It does. He shows you how crumbs should hold, then fall. Not dust, not clay armor, something like cake that pretends it never heard of sugar. He pinches in a whisper of charcoal from pruned branches, a memory of fire that will teach the roots to consider droughts like puzzles, not punishments. Your crooked basket would be good for carrying such handfuls. You pat its rim, and it wobbles bravely. Then the elder touches the little earthen jars waiting in a row, round-bellied ullas with necks like short-throated birds. He sets one beside the trunk and draws a circle with his finger on the ground. "Guide water," the motion says. "Don't chase it." You help dig with a flat stone, the soil giving with the generosity of something that has been fed fair tales and goats' complaints. The jar nestles to its shoulders in the hole. You fill it from a gourd. It drinks without noise, no drama, just a slow breath inward. A flat shard of slate becomes its hat, tilted like a nodding elder, keeping evaporation modest and mice politely elsewhere. You mark the spot with 3 pebbles, remember, so your feet don't court mischief later, and move to the next tree. Soon a constellation spreads across the terrace, small mouths buried at roots, ready to sip and share, little moons tucked in soil. The elder shows you how to listen with your fingertips along the neck. When the clay cools quickly, it is drinking well. When it stays warm, offer more. You stroke the jar absent-mindedly, as you did the dog's ear, and realize you have adopted another quiet animal that lives by your hand. A breeze turns up with a pocket full of leaf rattles. The elder lifts a broad fig leaf and pins it to a twig above the new graft with a thorn, casting a coin of shade right where the join might blush under sudden sun. "Courtesy," says the tilt of his head. He assigns you a gentle task: fetch water. You walk to the jar you set by the path hours ago, the one that hummed cool beside the clay threshold, and fill a gourd. The shepherds grin at your ceremonial gait. "Drink with your eyes," their nod reminds you, and you do. Then offer the rest to a thirsty stone that steams in thanks. The doorway spirit will approve, whiskers damp again. On the far side of the terrace, a minor emergency. A lamb decides your willow ties resemble grass with self-esteem. The dog, already reading the footnotes of the moment, intercepts with a nudge sculpted from good manners. The lamb reconsiders philosophy and returns to grazing on more conventional metaphors. The elder chuckles, a sound like dry leaves promising rain. He hands you the last strip of bark and watches as you wrap and seal the final join. Your hands remember the potter's steadiness, the basket's humble confidence, the bread's patient drum. The seam gleams, snug and hopeful. When the grafts are all dressed, the elder arranges 3 little stones at each trunk, your pebble code for fed, shaded, sealed. You practice the sequence: touch the stones, touch the jar neck, touch the leaf shadow. A blessing disguised as a checklist. The shepherd with silver hair adds a twist of the herbs he bought at the lake, tucking it under the slate cap, scent for the jars because even clay likes good company. You tuck your straw braid tighter into your belt, a ribbon holding together the day's small lessons. The light loosens its grip on edges. Everything rounds, softens. The elder wipes the knife with a cloth as respectful as prayer. He lifts your wrist and traces the crescent on your skin, then the palm circle. "Moon, easy, wait." You reply with the best hand language you have, and he smiles like a fig splitting in the heat. Quiet, sweet, inevitable. Down the terrace, the reed bed catches a rumor of evening. You hear water talking to stone somewhere under laurel. You do not yet hear worry in it. For now, water is a companion that strolls. You sit a moment, backs against warm wall, and the dog arranges himself across your ankles the way friendly fatigue does. The grafts stand within their new collars. The jars rest with their slate hats. The breeze arranges leaf applause. You carry the elder's words, no words at all, like a tune you whistle on a path you will take again. When you rise, your hands smell of resin and patient plans, and the hillside feels newly threaded with quiet promises you helped tie. You follow the slope down to the lake where reeds write thin green lines against the wind, each stalk a brush that paints the afternoon into quieter shades. The shepherd with the quick eyes raises a pipe carved from elder. No ornament, just a smooth bore and a patient mouth, and lets 2 notes step out and look around. They are not in a hurry. They never are. The dog pads ahead, tail penciling small commas, and you answer with the low palm circle. Easy, because by now your hands know this place as if it lent them a language. The path runs beside water like a thought deciding to become a sentence. Pebbles nudge your sandals, Reeds click in neighborly gossip. Dragonflies sketch silver punctuation marks where the light is friendliest. The lake keeps a book of sky and turns each page when the breeze asks. You drink it first with your eyes, remembering, then drink a leaf-cool mouthful from the gourd and offer a splash to a warm stone. It steams with theatrical gratitude, and you bow, because it seems rude not to applaud an encore. You pause at a laurel shrine tucked into the bend where the bank rises like a shoulder. It's not much, a stone the size of a sleepy ram, a ring of pebbles, a clay cup with a bead of oil winking in its belly. Someone has knotted a thin ribbon of undyed wool to a laurel branch, and it stirs as if remembering old promises. You lay your reed plate charm from the market along the cup's rim and set 3 grains beside it, bread's tiny cousins going visiting. The shepherd taps your wrist. Courtesy, says the tap, and you feel the same quiet approval the clay threshold gave when its whiskers went damp. The pipe flutes 2 curved notes that lift the smell of laurel and mingle it with warm water and sun-skinned reed. Beyond the shrine, the lake's shallows comb light into threads. Children practice serious work, skipping stones, counting ripples, pretending to disagree about which ripple belongs to which throw. An elder woman kneels at the washstone, wringing cloth with the rhythm of a piper who learned in the school of every day. She looks up, sees you, and adds the palm circle with a smile broad enough to fit your whole day. You bow back, and your basket, still charmingly crooked, opts to show off by holding nothing with great dignity. The shepherd's pipe keeps your feet from inventing obstacles. He plays the path open. The little trills are not commands but invitations, each phrase a door the breeze politely holds for you. He shows you how to read the lake's small writing. Cat's paws scribble when the hill's breath arrives. A steady hatching of ruffle gives away the deeper wind sneaking through the valley. When the surface is a single calm sheet, he lifts one eyebrow. Now you listen for what the water whispers underneath. You listen. Far out, a heron folds and unfolds its enormous paper self. Nearer, a duck assigns unsolicited comments to the day, and you accept them as minutes with feathers. You pass 2 small boats dozing with noses in the reeds. Their owners sit in shade, mending nets with the same quiet conviction the potter had, the same breath-led patience the elder taught you at the graft. Pine pitch warms in a clay cup near one hull, scent rising in a dark, resinous thought. The fishermen pinch pitch between fingers and smooth it along a seam, then laugh about last winter's water that thought it could rearrange boats to its taste. You take their joke into your pocket for later, next to the straw braid and the herb twist and the fig stem that has become a talisman against absent-mindedness. Where the bank shivers into sand, you slip off your sandals and step into water that surprised the sun and kept the surprise for itself. It beads your skin in bright commas. The dog considers joining you, then remembers administrative responsibilities and performs a supervisory sit. The shepherd's pipe softens to a pulse. You stand knee-deep and watch clouds float through your shins, the whole sky using you as a gate. For a moment you feel like a doorway spirit yourself, whiskers damp, entirely pleased. Farther along the reeds thin to a low causeway of stones that a patient hand laid a lifetime ago. You trudge across, slow on purpose, balancing the history of someone's afternoon with the theater of your ankles. The pipe offers a steadying trill when one stone wobbles, and your arms remember how to be wings even when they are just arms. A goose in the shallows issues critiques of your technique. You thank it with the seriousness appropriate to a professor, and it preens, satisfied that standards remain high. There's a mood shift you almost miss, a new silence under the reed chatter, nothing dramatic, no scolding, no alarm, more like the pause a storyteller takes to remember a name. You angle your head and catch a thinness in the spring run where it crosses under laurel roots, the trickle sounding a touch shy. The shepherd hears it too, of course, but he only lowers the pipe a breath and holds one finger in the air. Note it, not worry. You pocket the impression beside the pine pitch and move on, because afternoons like this take gentle notes and then keep walking. At a curve where the wind folds on itself, the path lifts and opens to a little landing brushed with rushes. A ferryman leans on his pole, hat tilted into a theory about shade. He touches his chest, and then the lake. He offers a slice of dried apple that somehow tastes like boats. You accept, and the pipe answers with a sprig of melody that persuades the apple to be sweeter than it already was. He tells a two-sentence story with his shoulders about a fog that once rolled in, and everyone tied little chimes to the reeds so they could listen their way home. You picture it, bronze tongues tasting mist, and file the image for night. A pair of girls jog by with baskets slung and sandals looped to their wrists, their hair carrying the long-distance rumor, though the sea is a memory of someone else's stories. They slow to match your flow and show you a game. Count the cloud lambs that pass across the water's face. Whatever number you decide is true. You pick 11.5 because the last one is indecisive. They approve, then sprint away, laughing the kind of laugh that turns corners without knocking into them. As the sun tilts, light pours itself thin and honey-colored across the reeds. The shepherd pockets the pipe and lets silence finish the tune. You feel taller and softer, as though the lake ironed you too. The laurel shrine watches you go by again. The ribbon flutters like a handkerchief used only for very good buys. You touch your belt, straw, herb, fig, and each token answers with a small, friendly memory. The dew ladle on your tongue, the threshold steam, the graph's slow handshake. You climb a little, soles sandy, sandals loose, the dog finally allowing himself a quick splash as a private reward. Your breath matches the slope, and even your shadow seems unhurried. At the turn, you look back. The lake keeps your reflection for one more heartbeat, then lets it fall to pieces and reassemble as cloud. You do not mind. Pieces and reassembly have been the day's instruction. The pipe rises for a last soft phrase, a moth of sound, then sleeps in its owner's belt. You move with the hill, a step and a pause, palm down, easy, as the evening begins to gather its gentle tools. A cooler wind, a reed hush, a thought about water you will soon follow upstream. For now you taste apple boats on your breath, and let the path carry you homeward by degrees. The climb back from the reeds is all copper light and unbuttoned breeze, the kind of late afternoon that usually persuades leaves to gossip and sheep to pretend they invented napping. You reach the terraces expecting the figs to be smug with sweetness, but a few nearest the wall wear a look you know from long train stations and underwatered window boxes. A quiet droop at the shoulders, The youngest leaves tilt like tired ears. Your crooked basket, which excels at holding nothing with dignity, suddenly feels like a canteen of worry. The silver-haired shepherd hears it the way he hears bells, without needing to be told there are bells. He drops one knee to the dust, sets two fingers at the base of a trunk, and touches the clay neck of the buried jar. Earlier it cooled fast, drinking like a polite giant. Now it keeps its warmth like a story it isn't ready to share. He pivots a palm flat, note it, and then draws two fingers together until they almost meet, water narrowing. The younger shepherd lifts the pipe to his mouth, thinks better of it, and tucks it back into his belt, as if the afternoon has asked for listening more than music. You catch the mood that moves through the orchard. Not alarm, not lament, just that hush a kitchen makes when the bread isn't singing quite right. The elder from the grafting terrace arrives as if the hills sent for him. Cloak walnut dark, knife asleep in its sheath, eyes reading shadows. He greets you with the palm circle. Easy, still easy. Then, with two fingers, he sketches the moon arc across his palm and taps the knuckle you used for knocking the bread. Patience. Listen to the drum. He kneels and presses his ear to the wall stones, an old habit, listening for the thin, silver thread of the spring that usually runs like a whisper under laurel and across tufa. The whisper tonight is polite to the point of disappearing. You walk with him to the nearest ola. You lay fingertips along the clay neck, as he taught, warm, too warm. You try another, warm again, wearing the afternoon instead of sipping it. The slate hats look jaunty, but even jaunty hats prefer a little responsibility beneath them. The herb twist the silver-haired shepherd tucked there earlier lifts its scent, as if trying to encourage the jar to remember its job. You whisper encouragement, because at this point your professional qualifications include has whispered at pottery. Astonishingly, it helps you feel better. Along the terrace edge where moss writes soft cursive on tufa, the little water channels that usually skip like children after bread are behaving with adult restraint. A bead of silt clings to a lip. A length of reed leans across a notch as if testing careers in damming. The dog pads down the run and looks back, ears folded like letters waiting to be opened. You squat, dip a finger, taste. Just a ghost of cool, as if water arranged for a cousin to stand in. The elder rustles up the people whose hands know these stones. The plum-shawled hearth-keeper wipes flour from her palms and arrives with a small clay ladle. The basket weaver appears with a short willow hook that doubles as a gossip stick. The potter brings a flat shard for scraping lichened grooves. Two children take possession of an important job, which is to feel useful and point at what you'd otherwise miss. Your team looks like the dream of a hillside. Tools that were already in the room, hands that like being told things by bark and clay. You, for your part, bring your spoon from the market, a gourd, and an optimism that has survived worse than a thirsty afternoon. You begin at the laurel shrine where the bank rises like a thoughtful shoulder. The ribbon tied to the branch earlier moves less eagerly, nodding instead of fluttering. The oil bead in the cup holds steady as a planet. The elder cups water from the spring mouth. It arrives, yes, but as a thread that keeps glancing over its shoulder to check if anyone minds. He tastes, presses lips, nods. Clean, shy. He signs your task with a language you nearly dream now. Follow the old channel. He draws the path in air, spring, laurel root, tufa groove, cistern, clay mouth, little divisions to terraces. We will walk it, he says, without saying it, and see where the song forgets a word. On the way down from the shrine, you practice the tracker's sequence he taught over grafts. 3 pebbles for fed, shaded, sealed. Now you trade pebbles for eyes and ears. Clear, clog, curious. The children adopt this code with thrills of authority. One finds a leaf skeleton laid like lace over a notch. Curious. Another points at a wad of reed fuzz caught where 2 grooves meet. Clog. You lift it with the willow hook and set it aside. Gentle, like teasing a knot from hair. A small set of prints stipples the damp sand along one channel. Little commas walking in 2 lines, neat as a poem that keeps its secrets. The dog sniffs with professional discretion, looks at you, looks at the elder, and sits, meaning resident acknowledged, not a problem. The elder's mouth twitches, hedgehog, in a smile that considers both prickles and diplomacy. You tuck the information behind your ear with the reed plate charm. It will matter. You can feel the way it will. You carry water where you must, pouring a test cup into the top groove and watching. Usually the hillside behaves like a polite play. Pour in one actor and everyone remembers their lines. Now the scene forgets cues and your cup pools in a low pocket you don't remember being low. The potter's shard makes a soft scrape as he persuades the groove to rediscover its intention. The water, pleased with supervision, goes on. At the first junction where the tufa lip edges into a small basin, a film of fine silt turns the flow to velvet, beautiful, not helpful. You swirl with the clay ladle, slow so you don't convince the whole slope to follow you, and you lift a palm of silt like wet flour. The hearthkeeper gestures toward a woven sieve she's brought, and you pass the silt through the sieve. The children watch the stream clear shell by shell, the way a mind clears when someone hands it a nap. Dusk hovers at the edges but doesn't insist. The shepherds work without fuss, crooks resting against knees. Every few steps someone does the palm circle, easy, because even problems here expect courtesy. No one panics because figs are patient, and people who live with figs learn the trick. You think of the bread that wouldn't be tapped before its drum was ready, the graft that asked for the moon's shyer days, the doorway spirit pleased by steam. This will be the same kind of work. Not force, not scolding, not heroics, just a long conversation with the hill until it remembers how to hum. At the cistern above the first terrace, the water arrives like someone who lost their sandals, late, apologetic. The interior shows a ring where it used to stand. You make a mark with ash at the current line so you won't try to argue with memory later. The elder tilts the jar's slate hat and listens at the neck again. Still warm, still story-keeping. He hands you the willow hook, a passing of the baton that asks your hands to add their lines to the play. You feel oddly honored, the way you felt when the potter let you draw the leaf on the cup. The hillside trusts you with its plumbing. The plan becomes simple enough to keep in your sleep. Follow the channel at first light from the laurel mouth down to the lowest terrace, clearing, coaxing, leaving courtesy gifts of pebbles and shade leaves where needed. Check every ola neck. Listen for the spring's vow to fatten. Tonight you'll do what dusk allows. Reach the hedgehog path and see if a kindness can be arranged. The children volunteer their sharp eyes. The dog volunteers his nose. You volunteer your spoon and the authority of someone who has whispered at pottery and been taken seriously. Before you set off along the next run, the silver-haired shepherd taps your wrist. Note, not worry, and traces the moon arc again. The plum-shawled woman presses a fig in your palm. Small, sturdy sweetness, portable courage. You tuck it beside your straw braid, herb twist, fig stem talisman, and wood spoon. You are a shop of small solutions. You make the palm circle back at them, easy, and you step into the green dusk where the channels wait, ready to learn their lines again, with you as their quiet prompter. You slip into the green dusk with the quiet committee you've somehow earned. Elder, shepherds, hearthkeeper, potter, 2 children bright as sparrows, and the dog whose tail writes minutes in the dust. The air cools as the slope settles. Tufa walls glow faintly like old bones under moss. You run fingertips along the channel's lip. It's rough sweet, a rasp that remembers chisels and calloused hands. Water ticks here and there, the way a distracted storyteller taps the table while hunting for the next word. Your little code is ready. Clear, clog, curious. Pebbles gather at junctions like punctuation. Curious, one child whispers, pointing at a place where the groove darkens and then, oddly, brightens as if the flow has been playing hopscotch. The potter kneels. His shard makes a soft, steady scrape, freeing a lace of silt that looks like the river's old handwriting. The hearth-keeper swirls at clay ladle, no splashing, a librarian shushing water back toward order, while the younger shepherd teases reed fuzz from a notch with the willow hook, patient as a hairdresser undoing a stubborn plait. A small tail in footprints leads you farther, neat comma tracks trotting parallel to the groove, pausing where light pools under laurel roots. The dog sniffs, folds his ears like sealed letters, and sits, acknowledgement, not alarm. You follow the footprints to a bend where the channel narrows between 2 stones. There, a handful of dry leaves and the soft straw of grass are tucked into a tidy dome against the wall, the sort of purposeful housekeeping only a creature that carries its courage in a ball would attempt. The blockage isn't a bad mood, it's a home. You meet 2 bright eyes deep in the nest. They regard you with the calm of somebody who has invented hedgehog solutions to hedgehog problems and does not intend to litigate with humans tonight. Everyone's hands say the same thing at once: courtesy. The elder sketches the moon arc on his palm, easy timing, and then makes a shallow scoop motion beside the nest, a bypass, not eviction. You nod so hard your straw braid threatens to vote separately. The children bounce on their heels and then restrain themselves into useful solemnity when the hearthkeeper's eyebrow performs its no acrobatics sermon. The potter taps a stone, a candidate for a small sill. The silver-haired shepherd measures with 2 fingers the width of water's willingness. You begin with a reed culm laid like a tiny bridge along the outer edge of the groove, its pith light, its skin smooth under your thumb. The potter leans a flat slate chip against it, making a ledge. The elder beds the slate with a pinch of resin softened between his fingers until it agrees to behave like putty. A pinch of moss, a line of pebbles, not a dam, only a suggestion, and your spoon becomes a diplomat, lifting a little water to test the route. It slides along the reed with a delicate sigh, hesitates at the slate lip, then decides to go visiting the lower groove without nosing the hedgehog's door. The children gasp, as if a magician removed a scarf and found a cooperative spring underneath. You line the nest's upstream edge with 2 walnut-sized stones, leaving a finger width for breath. The hearthkeeper tucks a fig leaf over the nest, like a respectful awning, the veins centered, the green casting a coin of shade. "Resident brights," you murmur, and the dog agrees by not wagging too loudly. Those eyes in the dome blink once, very slowly, as if stamping your permit. You add a tiny arch of twigs just because you can. Architecture for someone the size of a fist matters more than you'd guessed this morning. Downstream, the channel wakes by degrees. Where silt made velvet, you comb it with the clay ladle and sieve. Where roots had gotten curious, you trim a single whisker and thank the laurel for sharing. In a shallow basin, a leaf skeleton lies perfect as lace. You lift it whole, hang it on a twig, let the breeze study its transparent map. The younger shepherd dribbles a gourd's mouthful into the top run. The elder listens at the next turn. The sound fattens, not a torrent, just a fuller whisper, like a shy singer finding the note that fits their throat. At the first ola you check, your fingertips learn good news the instant they touch clay. The neck cools quickly. There it is, that sip you were looking for. The silver-haired shepherd grins sideways, a laugh stored for later. He tips the slate hat, peers, replaces it with the politeness of a guest putting a cup back where he found it. You make your 3-pebble mark, fed, shaded, sealed, and add a 4th smaller pebble off to the side. One child points and raises eyebrows. "What's that?" "Bypass," you say, wagging your little finger. She nods, investing the 4th pebble with official status. Light thins to honey. The piper lifts the elderwood flute and keeps it at his chest, not playing yet, as though the song is in the water and he's simply making sure it doesn't wander off. You all move with the hill, clearing without scolding, adjusting without pride. A spider's web crosses the groove at one span, its threads beaded with a few stubborn droplets. You angle a reed to give water a lane under the silt. The spider, who is not applied for relocation, keeps her house and gains a canal. She taps the web once, approving your engineering review. At the junction stone above the cistern, you brush away a thin ruffle of silt and a curled bark scrap that had been acting like a gate half closed. The cistern takes a breath you can hear, a round vowel sound, and the ash mark you drew earlier waits for the patience of hours. No one checks twice. You all understand bread drum timing now. It will climb by morning if you don't stare it into stubbornness. You return to the laurel bend to see how your hedgehog neighbor's street improvement is faring. The reed lip shines with a film that renews itself. The leaf awning flickers like a sleepy hand, and the little eyes have retreated deep into the straw globe, which is hedgehog for, we're fine. The elder touches the channel, then your wrist. Moon, easy, and draws the palm circle that says both thanks and keep going. You leave a sliver of dried apple by the laurel root, remembering the ferryman's fog chime story, and imagine tiny bronze tongues here someday, not to call you home, but to tell water it is welcome. When you finally stand, ankles talking in their inside voices about stepping and crouching, the hillside sounds different. Not louder, fuller. The tick has become a string, the string a ribbon, the ribbon the old soft choir you first heard near the ridge. You cup your hands and drink from the lowest run. It tastes like what patience becomes when it remembers it's allowed to be joy. The dog, relieved to find that administration and mercy can be the same job, does a small, dignified zoom and then pretends he didn't. The shepherds set their crooks across their bodies. Head down, we wait, then sideways, we flow. Pebbles mark your work, moss keeps your secrets. You look once more at the tiny arch over the hedgehog door, and because you are that sort of person now, you straighten one twig by a finger width. The leaf awning nods. The channel sings a sentence that had lost a word and found it again. You shoulder your basket that's finally carrying something, air mostly, and a spoon that learned diplomacy, and follow the team uphill, the slope writing evening under your feet. By the time you reach the middle terrace, the water's voice has remembered itself, and the orchard answers with a shiver of leaf applause. Someone claps once, a tidy punctuation, and the hillside behaves as if a tiny festival has been penciled into the margin. Children arrive with armfuls of fig leaves, glossy as if they were just polished by the moon. The basket weaver brings reed twine spun thin enough to behave, yet thick enough to forgive. The hearth keeper sets a low board beneath the trellis, flour drifting into the air like a rumor of winter. You stand in the doorway between tasks and celebration, and the silver-haired shepherd tips his crook sideways. Flow. So you do. Garland making begins with that lesson you keep relearning. Soft hands, steady breath. The basket weaver shows you how to choose leaves with agreeable stems, neither sulking nor brittle, and to lay them overlapping like roof tiles on a cottage that trusts rain. Reed twine loops once, twice, then takes a nap under itself to hold the seam. Your first garland looks like a green river that forgot which bank is which. The basket weaver rotates it a thumb's width, tucks a stray stem, and suddenly your river has a shoreline. You add laurel sprigs from the spring bend, just enough to whisper the water's name through the leaves, and a few threads of dried thyme, because celebration wears perfume, even if it's going to bed early. Songs warm up the way ovens do, slowly, with small clicks and pleasant patience. The younger shepherd lifts the elderwood pipe and sends out a test note that checks corners for echoes. A frame drum appears, goatskin stretched over a willow hoop, palm-soft and generous. The drummer is the potter's sister. She taps once with fingers, once with the heel of her hand, listening for the bread drum note the hearth-keeper taught you. Two children arrive with clay seed rattles shaped like little figs. Shake them and you hear last summer run through fennel and barley. The first hymn is barely a hymn, more a long hum braided with the pipe, a melody that knows better than to stand on tiptoe. You hum too, and try not to look like someone faking a chorus. The dog approves by yawning in rhythm. Bread wants its say. The hearth-keeper flower kisses the table and lays down 3 rounds like moons in different phases, young, comfortable, almost wise. She motions you to wash at the jar, eyes first, and then presses a lump of dough into your hands that behaves like a friendly cat. It stretches, returns, pretends indifference, demands affection. She shows the scoring knife, thin crescent, obedient shine, and draws on the first loaf a set of swollen sorrows for steam to escape. On the second, she carves a braided pattern to honor straw. On the third, she taps your wrist and lifts your hand. Your turn. You score a leaf, the vein you drew on the potter's cup sneaking into bread. The cut is a little enthusiastic at one end, but the hearth-keeper smooths it with a thumb and calls it wind. You nod, very relieved that wind has been invented. A boy brings a bowl of olive oil bright enough to make conversation with dusk. With a sprig of rosemary, you paint each loaf's skin so it will arrive at the fire already shining. The hearth purrs, embers fox red, and the peel slides the moons into heat. The dog relocates to the legal distance where dogs supervise ovens. While the bread thinks, you return to garlands. The elder has taken a seat like a walnut in a chair and ties a long string of leaves that will be hung above the cistern. He adds 3 small river stones to its center. Your pebble code made visible, fed, shaded, sealed. You tuck a 4th tiny pebble into the knot, bypass, and the children cheer as if a hedgehog had been granted honorary citizenship. Maybe it has. The pipe finds a tune that turns walking into swaying. Voices collect around it, low enough to not startle figs, sturdy enough to lean on. Words are simple, almost nothing. Thank you, little water. Walk, little water. Root's good friend. Stone's soft story. The drummer barely touches the skin. Thump as a heartbeat, hush as a breath. And in between, seed rattles remember fields. Someone begins a call and answer you can manage. When your turn comes, you sing, "Walk, little water," and the hillside agrees by not arguing. It feels like getting the nod from a goat who usually saves approval for saints. Not every ribbon obeys. A green strand you try to braid forgets it is supposed to be ribbon and behaves like grass pursuing higher education. It keeps popping out of place, happy to major in chaos. The basket weaver hands you a trick. Wet your fingers in the gourd, smooth the blade of the grass, then lay it in with humility. You do, and the ribbon remembers its vocation. You tie your finished braid to a crook and then to the slate hat of an olla near the hedgehog's bypass, a thin, fluttering thank you that the jar accepts with stoic grace. The elder watches you do it and makes the moon arc on his palm. Right time. You hadn't planned it that way, but yes, it feels like the right time. Bread decides it is present. The hearth-keeper taps the first loaf. The drum says, "Done." She lifts it, and your leaf opens along its vein, a soft valley where butter will someday vacation. The braided crust glows, and the wind-cut loaf looks like a map of a shoreline you'd like to walk. She breaks off a corner, blows across it, and hands it to you. You breathe, then bite. It tastes like gratitude the size of a mouthful. Flour, oil, rosemary, a rumor of fig from where your hands remembered earlier tasks and told the dough. You pass pieces around, drizzle a ribbon of honey, and the seed-rattle children keep time with tiny restraint, as if the music might frighten butter if it were nearby. As light leans longer, you hang garlands, one above the cistern so water can feel dressed, one at the laurel shrine so the ribbon can gossip with the wool not there, one along the tufa run where your spoon learned diplomacy. The hedgehog's door gets a tiny swag, nothing that would trouble Whiskers. The silver-haired shepherd puts a leaf crown on the dog for 5 seconds of ceremony, which the dog endures with a look that says he is above such pageantry and also secretly pleased. The pipe sets a last phrase on the air like a bookmark. The drum finishes the measure, and your braid of green ribbons behaves beautifully for once and stays tied. When the first star uncurls over the ridge, the orchard has become a room you recognize by scent alone: oil, flour, laurel, and the cool metallic whisper of clean tufa. You sit with the others on the warm wall, fingers sticky with the last melt of honey. The elder raises his hand and draws the palm circle you now feel in your joints, easy, and the whole terrace answers with a breeze. Somewhere close, water chuckles as if it has been included in a good joke without being asked to repeat it. You tie one final ribbon to your belt beside the straw braid, the herb twist, and the fig stem, and the knot settles like a sigh that made up its mind to be content.
Dusk finds you at the edge of a terrace where the hill stores its breath, and there the olive press waits, half machine, half animal dream, timbers dark with years of green stories. A lamp coughs into bloom by the door, and the flame brings its own honey-colored grammar. Shadows bow, stone nods, brass winks. The silver-haired shepherd palms a circle, easy, and you slide inside, boots whispering over flour-dusted boards sprinkled with clean sand to keep souls honest. You note this because oil has opinions about ankles. The press is a long-armed creature, a bean thick as a sleeping ox shoulder, slung over uprights, its far end loaded with stones the size of quiet arguments. Beneath, woven mats, round as moons, made of coiled reed and fiber, stack one by one, each cradling olives crushed into a dark green paste that smells of pepper and leaf, spring and thunder. A millstone dozes in the corner, its rim slick with memory. A boy turns it by pushing a bar, slow as water in shade, and it grumbles in a tone that makes the dog choose the other side of the room. The potter's sister, the one with drum hands, tends the mats. She lifts a cloth, nods at the paste, and layers the disc onto the press bed. The elder levers down the beam with a creak you feel in your knees. The weight lowers like a patient breath. From the edges of the stacked moons, the first drops slip, bright and doubtful, into a carved channel and along to a clay basin. You drink with your eyes first, good lesson, and see green turning to gold as if dusk itself has been persuaded to liquefy. The basin does what basins do best, keeps quiet, receives. A girl steadies a wick in a saucer lamp and splashes a fingertip of last season's oil. The flame stands, small, and not at all theatrical, content to practice its vowels. The lamp smell, linen smoke and green fruit mixes with the press's deeper scent until your breath forgets to count and simply enjoys being a place where air lives. The younger shepherd picks up the elderwood pipe, then puts it down again. Here the press provides the music, wood complaining pleasantly, stone remembering, drops ticking a soft metronome. The first basin reaches its modest pride, and the potter, barefoot to respect the slick floor, lifts it toward a settling jar. He winks as he pours, his mouth shaping a joke you haven't heard yet but are already ready to laugh at. The stream enters with the green promise. The jar takes the promise and begins the old alchemy, olive water below, oil rising like a quiet thought that insists on being noticed. The hearthkeeper hands you a slip of bread, still warm from earlier moons, its face brushed with rosemary. She tips a spoon. A thread of newborn oil lines the crust, and it glows the way leaves glowed when you held them up at noon. You taste. It is grass and almond and a little pepper that clears an interior window you didn't know needed opening. Your grin arrives without consulting the rest of your face. Around you, shoulders lower an inch, the press always asks for that particular silence, the kind that fills up with sleepy laughter as soon as the house knows the oil will in fact be oil. Someone mutters the universal press prayer. Not too many pits, not too much rain, no sandals on the beam, please. This last line arrives because the younger shepherd has already attempted a stylish pivot and produced a soft skid. He bows to the beam, and the beam, generous, accepts the performance without consequences. Stories arrive the way oil does. Slowly at first, then once the groove remembers itself, steadily. The elder tells of a winter when emperor wore ice collars in the dawn, and a lamp flame learned to stamp its feet like a shepherd. The drumhand's sister counters with the time a goat fell in love with a hanging mat and followed it around the press until the goat and the mat both smelled of green thunder. You contribute your hedgehog bypass, twigs and reed and fig leaf awning, and the room salutes the resident with a round of nods. The dog, who met the hedgehog's closing hours earlier, thumps his tail once in acknowledgement, then resumes pretending that oil rooms hold no interest for professionals of his rank. Your hands go sticky. Olive paste has the personality of friendly sap, and the potter passes a handful of clean sand the way a priest passes a reassurance. Rub, he signs. Sand persuades. Water argues. He's right. The grit lifts the green without scolding your skin, and the gourd wash after is a small holiday. You touch the press beam with a knuckle, politeness, and the wood feels like a well-trained shoulder. The elder traces the moon across his palm, right time to tighten, and the beam lowers a fraction more, a deliberate thought settling. Drops quicken, then relax into their steady recipe. The lamp trims itself to a smaller flame and becomes braver for that. Shadows of mats and ropes and the elder's walnut cloak play across the ceiling in a puppet show about patience. The basket weaver ties a new sling for the filled discs, making a cradle of reed that will not mind being kissed by oil. The hearthkeeper sets out a plate of olives cured dark and wrinkled, old jokes in fruit form, alongside young green ones that crunch like fresh news. You take one of each, because diplomacy. Someone recalls the season's sandals got ambitious. The younger shepherd demonstrates, sliding a palm theatrically across the board, narrating his elegant disaster in gestures so grand that even the stone looks amused. The room's laughter is the soft kind, the kind you wish had a wool blanket. You are assigned the ceremonial duty of holding the lamp while he reenacts his rescue. A crate here, a broom there, a dignity restored in 3 tidy steps, a bow, and a vow to carry sand in his pocket. He shows you there is sand in his pocket. Of course there is. Between basins, you carry the settling jar to the cool corner where amphora wait with their clay stoppers like hats at rest. A ribbon hangs from a peg, garland leaf, time thread, one of the ones you braided earlier. You drape it across the nearest jar, unplanned symmetry that makes the room breathe yes. The elder notices and taps your wrist. Moon, circle, good manners. And for a second, you're absurdly certain you could run an empire built entirely on courtesy and jars. The last press of the night is a shy thing, all patience and persuasion. You hum the water hymn under your breath, walk, little water. And the drops, which happen to be oil tonight, answer with a brighter vowel. When the beam finally rises, relieved of its duty, the mats sag with the pleasant fatigue of honest work done. Outside, night has unpacked its cricket orchestra, and a sliver of moon lifts through the fig crown like a silver fish ascending. Before you leave, the Press family insists on one more taste, the smallest spoon of the new oil over a crumble of cheese. You drink with your eyes first. Good lesson. And see green turning to gold as if dusk itself has been persuaded to liquefy. The basin does what basins do best, keeps quiet, receives. On your way out, you sprinkle a respectful pinch of sand on the step. Slippery sandals have had their comedy for the evening, and smooth it with your heel. The silver-haired shepherd palms a circle, easy, and you follow him into the dark where garlands wait on the cistern and water hums its better song, your hands still scented green, your pockets carrying the night like a warm coin. Night takes the hill the way a shawl finds shoulders, and a thread of people gathers where the path tips to the ridge. Garlands you tied earlier hang from crooks and wrists. Their leaves whisper each step, as if encouraging the stones to keep their secrets. Lamps bloom one by one, clay saucers with small, careful flames, each set at a distance the press house taught you, enough for seeing, not enough for swagger. The silver-haired shepherd lifts a hand. You answer with the palm circle, easy, and the procession agrees by breathing together, like a single chest that learned patience from bread. The piper chooses the pipe's lowest register and coaxes 2 notes that behave like moths, gentled by oil and dusk. Behind him, the drumhand's sister carries her frame drum and does not play it yet. She walks it the way a person carries a sleeping child. You fall into the line near the elder, who has tucked a small pouch of grain into your belt, just beside the straw braid and the herb twist. He traces the moon arc across his palm, right time, and nods toward the ridge where the old grove stands, a few trees shaped like memory and wind in conversation. Bronze chimes wait there, thin tongues hung from a crossbar, each with a thread of reed or wool, each quiet until a breeze suggests a sentence. Someone must have remembered the ferryman's fog anecdote, because a laurel ribbon ties one chime to the next, an echo of river mist turned hill ritual. You carry 2 figs cupped in one hand. Their skins are night soft, their stems like commas, pausing the day before it becomes a dream. The dog pads in the shadow margin, the legal distance for a professional who respects ceremonies but has opinions about smoke.
At the edge of the grove, the elders place flat stones for offerings. Nothing grand, just level promise. Children, serious as small astronomers, check the pebble codes you taught them. 3 stones near the cistern garland, fed, shaded, sealed, and a tiny side pebble, bypass, winks in the lamplight. The younger shepherd secures a lamp on a stump with a ring of damp sand, a lesson from the slippery sandal incident made ritual. Even laughter, here, becomes practical. The air tastes of laurel cool, fig milk imagined, and the faint minerality of tufa that has spent the day listening to water's grammar. A breeze rises, not a trouble, more like a curious guest. It tugs one bronze chime so the reed cord twists, and the clapper pisses the rim with a shy vowel. Another chime stays stubborn, clapper stuck in its loop, like a tongue that forgot its word. The elder glances, says courtesy with his eyebrows, and gestures fix it without waking the night. You step forward, your belt suddenly a toolkit of good manners. The olive wood spoon finds your fingers. You use its rounded back as a quiet finger, lifting the clapper free, smoothing the reed loop. The spoon earns its place among your talismans by doing what spoons do best, persuading without pride. The chime tests its voice, low bronze tasting air, and settles into the choir. Procession breath returns. The piper lets out a phrase that curls around ankles and encourages feet to keep being feet. You approach the first stone. The elder lays a palm on it, old bark habit turned to gratitude, and you set one fig down, press 3 grains beside it the way you pressed pebble signs earlier, and think a thank you to roots that drink so quietly you forget they are working. The drum hand's sister gives the drum a breath of sound, thumb to skin, hush, just enough for the bronze to answer in kind. A child tugs your sleeve, points to the hedgehog path that threads along the terrace below. You can't see the tiny arch you built, but you can feel it with the kind of sight the day taught you. You lift the second fig, slice it with your nail, leave half on the offering stone, and tuck half into a fold of moss at the base of the laurel, a neighborly gesture for a resident who conducts nocturnes in short steps. The dog pretends not to notice this bending of protocol. The dog is generous, and besides, hedgehogs deserve concessions. The line moves like a gentle sentence, commas and breaths, and the occasional parenthesis for a lamp that needs adjusting. The silver-haired shepherd pauses to straighten the leaf awning on a small shrine. You remember the doorway spirit and its damp whiskers, and leave a smear of dew from your gourd across the threshold stone. Steam does not rise now, but the gesture feels correct, the kind that teaches night how to sit without creaking. The laurel ribbon between chimes flutters and sends a bronze syllable down the slope. Somewhere at the lake it meets its reflection and nods. There is a small problem, because ceremonies would be incomplete without one. A goat, wearing plausible innocence, noses up beside a child who carries a bowl of grain. The bowl tips. A constellation of kernels stars the ground. The child's breath catches. The goat calculates. The dog slides forward on velvet paws and draws a neat, persuasive line with his shoulder between appetite and altar. You kneel first, palm down, slow circle, easy, and scoop grain back into the bowl with your spoon. The goat accepts a few sanctioned kernels from your palm, diplomacy, and the child resets his grip with the gravity of a captain retying a sail. The procession rewrites the sentence, "No one scolded," meaning intact. At the grove's center, a tree stands whose trunk you recognize by touch alone, cool bark speaking sap in low syllables. Around it, the chimes ring at intervals, each tone a color you taste more than you hear. One like warm brass in the press lamp, one like piper breath folded into reed shade, one like water finding the hedgehog's lane. The elder lifts a small bronze bowl. The hearth-keeper drizzles a breath of new oil onto the rim, and the metal gleams as if it has been reminded of why it agreed to be metal. The drum hand's sister gives one soft beat, the piper writes a curve the moon can sign. You offer your last grain, tap the stone as you learn to tap bread, and tuck a ribbon end into a crack where it won't bother bark. The silver-haired shepherd draws the moon arc across his palm once more, and the line answers with matching hands, a quiet field of crescents moving through lamp glow. For a moment everything holds, breath, bronze, leaf. Then the breeze walks through, the chimes spell a word no one needs defined, and night folds the hill the rest of the way. When you turn from the grove, lamps dim one by one without drama. The path back to the terraces remembers feet, yours follow. The piper stops playing and carries silence the way he carried the pipe, cradled, respected. You think of pebble codes and doorway steam and bread drums and jars with slate hats, and a very small arch for a very small citizen. And it all strings together into something like a necklace you didn't plan but now can't imagine removing. The moon clears the fig crown and looks like the inside of a jar lid, polished by many nights of opening and closing. You palm a circle, easy, and the ridge answers with the soft yes of owls. Dawn unbuttons the hill with quiet fingers, and the orchard comes awake the way a good book remembers your page. You step out into air that tastes like clean linen and laurel shade, and every fig leaf is jeweled with patient commas of dew. Bells speak in small silver syllables down slope. The dog, who has clearly been up before even the sun had the courage to yawn, greets you with a stretch that unrolls the morning. You answer with the palm-down circle, easy, and add the moon arc across your own wrist because this hour has that shy, right-time softness you've been collecting all along. The elder meets you by the low wall where you learn to hear sap think. He sets 2 fingers to a clay neck and smiles. The Ola cools fast, drinking well. You check others, and each jar answers with the same agreeable chill, slate hats tilted like polite hellos. At the bypass bend, the little arch you built still keeps its promise. The fig leaf awning has beaded into a tiny emerald curtain, and a pair of neat comma prints polka dots the damp. Hedgehog rush hour. You leave a single grain by the laurel root because bureaucracy should always be this sweet. The children, your pebble code deputies, count softly, fed, shaded, sealed, and the 4th pebble for bypass, everything exactly where you left it, and somehow better for having slept. The piper unpockets the elderwood pipe, but doesn't quite play. He exhales a thread of breath through it, so the instrument can smell the morning. The potter comes from the kiln shed, smelling of yesterday's fire gone to bed. He carries the cup you traced with a fig vein in wet slip, still the color of smoke, still unfired, still soft. He balances it on his open palm, and you drink it with your eyes first, the way the shepherd taught you to drink everything here. Soon, says his shrug, next fire. He ties a reed thread around your wrist in promise, then taps your spoon, the diplomat, against the cup's lip, a kiss of instruments that know their business. The basket weaver, saffron kerchief bright as a good idea, folds herself into the doorway and waves you near. She lifts a looped braid of willow and reed, thin as a thought, and fastens it around your wrist above the reed thread, a woven wristband the color of early tea. Its pattern is your day in green geometry, 2 lines for the water channels, 1 tiny step for the hedgehog arch, a small twist where the pipe's tune turned walking into swaying. She knots it with the patience of someone binding grafts, and smiles with all the satisfaction of a basket that finally understood its own bottom. You flex, the fibers answer with a gentle yes. The hearthkeeper appears with a pouch sewn from linen that smells faintly of last night's lamp. On the flap she's stitched a leaf like the one you scored into bread. Your first timid cartography become embroidery. Inside, dried figs, each a sun folded into itself, sugared with a little bloom that looks like moon talk. She taps the pouch and then your chest, for the road, for when you think you are done with sweetness and are not. She mimes tearing a fig, giving half to the air, so the road can eat too. You say you understand with a breath that is fuller than a word. The silver-haired shepherd chooses a fig and shows you how to listen for goodbye. The slight give at the neck, the nod of the stem, the way the skin's music changes under your thumb when it's ready to leave. You pluck one and lay it at the small stone altar where the old garland from last night has settled into its morning job of being green. 3 grains fall from your hand and land exactly where the dew wants them. You remember the doorway spirit and walk back to the threshold you watered yesterday. You breathe across your gourd and let a little stream steam the stone. No visible plume in this cool hour, only the sense that whiskers somewhere nod appreciatively. Someone laughs quietly, the particular market laugh that says a price has been agreed upon between friends. You turn, the girl with algae-green eyes from the lake has arrived with a coil of cord she insists will make your pockets behave. She ties your pouch to your belt beside the straw braid, the herb twist, the fig stem talisman, and the wood spoon, and then pats the whole museum of small solutions as if blessing a traveling library. The dog inspects the knot with his professional snout and signs the certificate of adequacy with a single authoritative chuff. Breakfast is a handful of warm crumble from a heel of bread, a thumb of cheese, and a lap of honey that remembers rosemary. You share it on the low wall while the pipe finally lets a note wander out and test the fences of the morning. The elder touches your wristband, then traces the moon arc across your palm one last time, right time to carry, then flattens his hand in that slow, familiar circle, easy. He picks up a tiny braid the child made, grass and stubbornness, and tucks it into the wristband's weave. You are now dressed in small kindnesses: reed promise, willow memory, grass mischief. A ewe strolls past as if late for nothing, and the dog, moved by ceremony, grants her the honor of being ignored. The younger shepherd attempts a dignified stoop and nearly recreates his famous slippery sandal routine. He catches himself with a dance step and bows to the beam that isn't here, collecting laughter in a cup and handing it around for sips. Someone, maybe you, says, "Drink with your eyes first," and the orchard answers by shining. You make a little circuit of farewells that are not really farewells. At the cistern, you adjust the garland so the central pebble knot sits straight over the dark mirror. At the laurel shrine, you press a fresh bead of oil into the cup and set your reed plate charm beside last night's ribbon so the two can talk. At the bypass bend, you straighten a twig by the width of a breath, which is probably ridiculous and absolutely matters. At the graft terrace, you check the pale wrist where the new scion shook hands, and the leaf you pinned to shade it let fall one perfect coin of dew onto your knuckle. Payment received, contract honored. You find the potter by the kiln again and trade promises, your cup in the next fire, your return in some later morning. The basket weaver taps your wristband twice, then once more for luck. 3 taps, like pebble code. The hearthkeeper touches your heart with 2 flour-dusted fingers, bread blessing, and presses a fig into your palm the size of a small question you already know how to answer. The silver-haired shepherd raises his crook sideways, flow, and aims it toward the path that lifts to the ridge. Not yet, your feet say, almost. You take one last look down the lanes you have learned by light and scent and sound, the reed rattle, the jar's cool throat, the stone's patient drum, and you let your eyes drink them properly. The procession of ordinary tasks begins without you, as it should. A child carries a basket of pebbles to teach new hands the code. The dog resumes his administrative patrol with the gravitas of a civil servant who knows where the important shadows nap. The elder stands with his palm open in that unmistakable circle, easy, and you draw the circle back, matching his hand in the space between you until it feels like you are both holding a hoop only the morning can see. You tuck the pouch of figs more snugly at your belt. The wristband's weave warms to your pulse. You inhale the orchard like a thoughtful goodbye and step toward the ridge where the pipe's tune leans, ready to braid path and sky. The path to the ridge begins where the terrace tips into sky, and time leans its small, convincing arguments against your ankles. You touch your wristband, the weave warm, the reed thread snug, the tiny braid of grass mischievous against your pulse. The pouch of figs taps your hip like a friend with an uncomplicated plan. Behind you, jars sip in cool throats under their slate hats. Garlands blink dew. The pebble codes glitter in quiet grammar. Fed, shaded, sealed, and that 4th shy stone for bypass that remembers a resident with prickled opinions. Hands left, palm circle, easy, and you return the sign to every face it fits. The plum-shawled hearthkeeper raises two flower-bright fingers to her brow and down. Bread blessing, portable, generous. The basket weaver pats her own wristband, then yours, checking the knot the way a mother checks the weather. The potter holds up your unfired fig-vein cup, balanced on his palm like a moon not yet taught to glow, and mimes next fire, the promise tucked between you as neat as a leaf vein. The children, solemn deputies of pebbles and codes, present you each with a spectacularly round stone, which you accept and then tuck beside your spoon, which has become not only a spoon, but a credential. The elder stands by the low wall and finds your eyes with the near smile of a fig about to sweeten. Moon arc across his palm, right time, and then the circle so soft your ribs learn it again, easy. He doesn't say you will return, he says it the way hills say hills, by existing. He touches the graft you tied yesterday, the pale wrist sealed in beeswax and good intentions, and the leaf you pinned shades the join by habit now. The coin of dew it drop paid at dawn has already joined the jar below. Payment received, contract honored, you think again, and the notion rides your breath. The dog escorts you to the first switchback with the discretion of a civil servant who understands boundaries and farewells. He performs a last administrative circle, sniffs the air for goats plotting comedy, and gives the orchard a nod that files everything under acceptable. When you scratch his ear, he leans exactly the amount a friend leans when pretending not to be sentimental. The pipe rises, elderwood, smooth and unshowy, and the younger shepherd lays a parting tune across the slope. It starts with the two moth notes you learn to hear at night, then opens into a river phrase that finds the bends you cleared and the little arch you built, and nods its way through each. The bronze chimes on the ridge answer in low syllables as the breeze drifts from laurel to thyme. Not a choir this time, so much as three neighbors at adjoining fences agreeing that the weather is doing its best. You walk in the space between notes, breathing the shape of them. Climbing feels different now that your feet speak hillside. You step, pause, not because the hill demands it, but because the rhythm says, we walk together. A shadow of last night's procession rests along the path, lamps traded for dew, drums for a wood pigeon disguised as a metronome. You press half a fig into your mouth, chew, slow, and press the other half into a crack in a warm stone. Token for the road, toll for whatever gatekeepers oversee ridges and returnings and the small economies of goodbye. At a curve you look back, because looking back is sometimes breathing. The terraces arrange themselves in the kind of order that only patience earns. Jars set to sip, leaves casting coins of shade, garlands talking in green to the cistern's dark mirror, a child adjusting the fourth pebble so bypass means what bypass must mean. The laurel ribbon flutters where oil left its good scent in a bronze rim. The press house door remembers slippery sandals and carries a smear of sand like a shrug that learned to be wisdom. In the reeds, the ferryman stands thin as a line break, and beyond him the lake holds the sky without complaint. The elder raises his crook once, sideways, flow, and the silver-haired shepherd raises his, head down, wait, and you understand both are true. Go, and carry this pace. The piper tips the tune upward, a small flight of notes that lands on your shoulder and rides there, unbothered by travel. The plum-shawled woman blows you an oven-cooled kiss. The basket weaver mimics your early crooked basket with both hands and then fixes it with an invisible tuck. Laughter arrives like rosemary on steam. You pocket it for evenings that forget their recipe. At the ridge, mist resumes its old job of turning distance into kindness. The grass up here still wears morning's olive smoke color, though the sun is higher. Hills enjoy pretending. You set the 2 round stones from the children on the flat of a boundary rock and draw the circle over them with your palm. Easy. Then the moon arc, right time, and then you breathe long and laurel slow and gather everything the day taught you into that breath. Drink with your eyes first. Teach things to agree. Guide water. Don't chase it. Move with the hill. Be courteous to thresholds and hedgehogs. Tie pebbles to memory. Let bread decide when it is ready to be bread. Carry sand if you intend to dance. Mist lifts its hem. The path home waits with that polite posture roads use when they are almost sure you're coming. You tighten the pouch at your belt. You touch the spoon, the straw braid, the herb twist, the fig stem, the reed thread, the willow weave, each a note in a chord that sounds like belonging. You don't say goodbye. You step forward, and the orchard, content with the grammar you learned, fades at the rate a lullaby fades, slowly, kindly, leaving the shape of itself inside you where it can hum when needed. The pipe's last phrase follows until it becomes wind, becomes breath, becomes your own quiet voice saying, "Easy, easy, go." You walk into the soft, traveled light, the ridge behind you, warm as a hand on your shoulder, the road ahead opening like a book you already know how to read. Breathe in, slowly, the way the lake opened for the smallest wave, and then breathe out, even more slowly, as if you were setting a fig on a quiet stone and letting it rest where it belongs. And as this breath leaves you, imagine it carrying the tiny bronze chimes down the slope until their sound becomes only the memory of gentle metal, and beyond that, just a feeling that the air is friendly to you. Your shoulders loosen the way the press beam rose at last, unburdened, steady, unhurried, and your jaw relaxes like a doorway spirit after steam, whiskers damp, satisfied. There is nothing left to carry that refuses to be carried, only these light tokens tied neatly at your belt, straw braid, spoon, herb twist, reed thread, each one a reminder that small kindnesses are enough, that small kindnesses are, in fact, more than enough. Let your eyes rest the way jars rest under slate hats, taking in exactly what they need and no more, letting the rest settle naturally, as oil and water learn their places without debate. If a thought arrives with busy feet, smile at it the way the dog smiled at goats, guide it gently to the side, and return your attention to the cadence of your breath, to the sound of water finding its old channel, to the moon's quiet arc traced across your palm. Picture the hedgehog doorway, leaf awning flickering, tiny arch straightened by a finger's width, and let the knowledge that such care exists soften the edges inside your chest. Feel the hillside gather around you like a shawl, woven from reed and thyme, warmed by bread and lamplight, and let it lay you down where figs shade the morning and bells speak in silver syllables, as you sink, word by word, into the kind of sleep that keeps promises and returns you gently, when you are ready, to a day that already knows your name. End of story. Sweet dreams.